And hello, everyone out there in podcast land, and welcome back to the front row. And we are here with another episode of Full Disclosure on the movie that literally the entire world was waiting for and saw this weekend, Avengers Infinity War. Now, look, we are here for you. We want this to be a safe space for everyone that went and saw this movie and was traumatized by this movie because, lordy lord, this thing was worth the 10-year wait, in my opinion. But I might be burying the lead a little bit there. I'm Jeremy Geckner. I'm the editor-in-chief of this place. Joining me today, the associate editor-in-chief, Mr. Craig McFarland, and he is just still incredulous. Craig.
Sorry, I'm shaking because I just went and used the time stone to see the 14 million possibilities of this show, and only one of them is not going to suck. So we need to really nail this, guys.
So we have to
make sure that
we
do this well.
Well, it's going to be hard to top that, but making his triumphant return to the front row, the hero himself, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Nathan Peake. What is up, man?
No nature this time. Don't worry.
No nature this time? Oh, don't bury the lead, man. That's the spoiler right there. No, it's great having you back, man.
It's nice to be here.
That's right. And of course, well, I mean, what do you say about this guy? You can't say anything about this guy. It's Mr. Scott McFarland. What's up, dude?
I am sunburned and I'm wearing no pants. I feel like I'm living the American dream.
I didn't want to know that, but I did at the same time.
Everything. This episode is off to the greatest it starts.
Yes.
Just so you know.
I feel like I've watched a porn that started that way.
But it didn't end that way, did it not?
Yeah, no, it did
I have
not.
to see how this podcast ends. I don't know.
Exactly. Hey, we make no promises here. But, well, okay, that's a lie. We make one promise on Full Disclosure, which is you are going to get spoilers. And man, oh man, was there ever a movie where that warning needed to be said and on this review needed to be stated? This is a spoiler review. We're going to be jumping around and we are going to be giving away a lot of plot points. So if you have not seen Infinity War, you want to bookmark this, you want to save it for later because we're going to go crazy here.
If I can, really don't listen to this until you've seen the movie. Like, I know that there's some that are tempting and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to go see it. So I think I'm going to just listen to the podcast about it. Don't do that with this one.
Yeah.
Okay, this movie made $630 million. Has anyone not seen this yet? aside from Lou Hare?
Aside from Lou, yeah, I don't know. Aside from our very own Lou Hare. I'm telling you, it's going to be, we just got to do it, man. We're just giving the spoiler right now, okay? So you all have been warned. We cannot waste any time with this one. So here we go. Full disclosure starts in 3, 2, 1. God, all the death. Anyway,
Thanos wins.
Thanos does win, man. Okay, well, let's get right into it. All right, let's go with what we liked most about this movie. Our first impressions. What works? What are your favorite moments? Scott, let's go to you. What do you think about this movie?
I think it's my childhood made real, is what I posted on Facebook after I saw it the first time. I've seen it twice now. No, I was concerned going into this because when you have 67 characters, it's almost nigh impossible to get it pulled off, and yet they did. The one thing I will say is I don't know how I'm going to fully rate this sucker yet, just because I think we've only seen Act 1 and Act 2 of this film. I think this is going to, the Avengers 3 and 4 are one film when it's all said and done. So how it ends will be very important to me, but I love the freaking thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, let's go on over to you. What are your first impressions?
I don't usually go back and see a movie twice in theaters. I do want to go back and see this one again. I think I was a little biased because I was so enamored by the reclining seats and the fact that I could drink beer in the theater.
Yeah,
very much so.
It's the little things.
I was slightly jaded, but I think out of 10 years worth of Marvel movies, I finally found a villain that I could get behind.
Yes.
There was depth,
No, I'm just like, you finally got your genocide you've been looking for so long.
Right. Murder, please.
The genocide we're all looking for, let's be honest.
But yeah, I mean, we'll get into that, but I think this by far has been probably the most well-versed movie as far as Marvel has done.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig, what about you? First impressions?
So I was thinking about this all day because it's hard to judge a movie fully when you don't know the conclusion yet. I loved this movie. I really did a lot. And I was trying to think of something unique that I can say in my first impression. And I will say this. I think that this is the best comic book movie that Marvel's done because they've had, all of their MCU films to this point have tried to be something. Like Ant-Man was a heist movie. Winter Soldier was a spy thriller. And this was truly, you could read this like a comic book. You could see the different elements coming together. You could see the wide landscapes. It's going to all throughout the universe. It doesn't apologize for any of that. It just takes you on this journey, and there's just so much going on. And I get that there's some people that didn't like that aspect of the film, but at the same time, I think that as a comic book reader, this is the most true comic book movie that the MCU has had so far, and I'm really looking forward to the conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an event comic book come to life. I mean, and it really is. And the fact that that even works is just amazing. Like I give the Russo brothers and Kevin Feige so much credit here, juggling all these storylines. I felt like they always stayed just the right amount of time. Just when I was starting to wonder about what was happening on Titan, they brought me back there. Just when I was, wondering what was happening in Wakanda, they got me back there. I think that the Russos really balanced this as well as they possibly could have. This movie is just incredible. I mean, it's literally, and I've seen the complaints too about how it's all set pieces. It's all third acts of a movie, basically. I was like, what? Well, that's what it should be. That's what this needs to be. This needs to be nonstop action. This needs to be thrilling things, and that's what it is. Let's transition into what our favorite parts of this movie are. And Nate, you hit it. Mine right now, Josh frickin' Brolin as Thanos. This is so far and above what I thought they could do with that character. And I mean, like, it's not so much. I find it hard to call him the greatest villain because they go to such great lengths not to get you to try to agree with him, but for you to understand him. And like when he's saying lines about why he wants to wipe out half the universe, you get it. You understand his reasoning. You might disagree with it, but you get it, and you can tell there's conviction there. And I just think that, like, for a studio that often says, we give our heroes more credence than our villains, I think, man, they knocked it out of the park with Josh Brolin in this, and I continue to be impressed by it.
Look at the tag at the end, and every other tag in the Marvel movie, it's been Iron Man will return, Thor will return. This was Thanos' movie, because it says at the end, Thanos
will return.
Doesn't say anything about the Avengers, anybody like that. And along with that, too, the final scene where he's, not the final scene, but the final fight scene when he's in the woods taking him out, he's pulling his punches. He doesn't want to kill anybody else aside from his, his snap. So if he doesn't have to snap Cap's neck, which he doesn't want to.
Yeah, you make a great point there. It's like he's got 5 stones at this point. He could just blink and throw a beam something and get to Vision and Scarlet Witch. But you're right. Like this isn't somebody who wants to kill just to kill. And that's actually a deviation from the comic book. He's very maniacal and stuff. But this one, he literally has that conviction. I think of the scene with Gamora in the throne room of his ship. And, like she's trying to tell him, he's explaining, the universe has finite resources and, somebody's got to do something about it. She says, you don't know that. And he says, I'm the only one who knows that. And, it's more of a duty, a responsibility with him that he feels this. And he talks about iron wills. Nate, what did you think of Thanos and Josh Brolin's performance?
Well, his performance was great. We've already covered that. Like the performance that he gave was wonderful, but it goes beyond the performance. It goes to the writing.
Yes.
They built a character that you felt sympathy for.
Yeah.
Because I did feel sympathy for him in the sense that we live in a world where overpopulation is present. So if anything, this should be very, very clear and evident with what's going on in our current climate. And then to go, you see him not want to do what he's doing, but he has the conviction to do it because he believes it's the right thing. That's what you want out of a villain. It's not like whatever his ass was in Doctor Strange, where it's just like, I just want to live forever.
Caecilius,
if it just kind of destroys everything, okay. This guy's like, no, I'm doing this for the betterment of everything. And you can kind of get behind it. Or even when he's getting the Soulstone, the last thing he wants to do is kill Gamora, who outwardly despises him, but also loves him. And you could see how it pains him to do it, but he does it because he has such conviction to do it.
Yeah, and you remember what he says there. I turned away from my destiny once. I can't do it again. Craig, what did you think specifically of Brolin and specifically of that scene on, I can't remember the planet, but getting the Soulstone and his decision to sacrifice Gamora?
It's like I was going to say Vladimir. It's Vladimir.
It's either Vladimir or Vladimir.
Maybe that's where Wanda's Russian accent went. Anyway, so let's... So Brolin did such a great job because we have seen Thanos for maybe
I'd say like 5 minutes.
5 minutes of screen time, right? Between all of the 19 movies leading up to this. And what's impressive is that he's able to cement this character so quickly that you do start to feel a little sympathy, or you're like, you know what, maybe this guy's not as he knows he has a quote unquote moral center. It's a terrible moral center where he wants to eliminate people. But he even makes that talks about how Gamora's home is now a paradise because of him, because he killed all those people, which again, probably up for, you could probably argue that point for days. Yeah. Obviously genocide's not a great thing, but all the other characters have had several movies to build up those characters, so we kind of felt that compassion for them, or we felt, that they had some kind of intricacy. And I think that that's why all the other villains have fallen flat in the Marvel universe. Not all of them. Loki, obviously, there's a couple of the good examples, but those villains only get a few minutes to capture us, and none of those actors have been able to portray those writers have been able to portray those villains in such a way where instantly you are captivated by that villain. And Brolin and the writers of this film allowed us to feel that for Thanos. And I think that's why he's easily the best villain they've ever written in the MCU, bar none. So, I mean, he did a great job of delivery, especially through the Andy Serkis motion cap, everything. But I really was captivated by him and really felt for him when he had to kill Gamora, which is weird. Like, you shouldn't feel anything for the villain.
I'm the CGI hater usually, but this was like the first film where I actually think he looked better in daylight than he did in dark. True. The weakest scene I thought with the CGI for Thanos was in the throne room with Gamora when he's walking up to the throne, because he looked a little chintzy. But when he's in the woods at the end with the sun shining down on him, it is perfect. The CGI is perfect.
I'll do you one better there, Scott. The scene on Titan where the plan is working and Mantis is right there and Quill is right in his face talking to him. I mean, I was just like, that could easily just be a prosthetic guy right there. Like, it looked like they were so easily in the same space with each other. And that's just phenomenal. But, I can't remember which of you said it, but you're right. Like, this guy, he doesn't see killing as the thing that he likes to do. He sees it as the duty, he says, the hardest decisions need the most iron wills or something like that. For him, this is what needs to happen, and nobody else is willing to do it. So I guess it falls to me. And, yes, he has an amoral center. And I like that the Russos and the writers even still gave him moments where you don't forget, okay, well, yeah, but this guy's still pretty bad. Like when he's pulling apart Nebula in the ship, and when he's, God, that scene just, that still just kind of got in under my skin. But, he's still Brolin just speaks with such softness all the time. Especially in that he's pulling his daughter apart, and yet he's still sitting there with Gamora, like, I know you, it's so soft and trying to coax her into doing what he wants. I mean, it's just amazing.
But that's a great example of why this was such a great, it gave you so much. Like, you could have seen this movie and not seen another Marvel movie, probably been okay, probably a little confused. But from Guardians 2, between Gamora and Nebula that he loves Gamora and then he absolutely hates Nebula. And so that's why he's able to pull that off in that scene, because every time that Nebula lost to Gamora, she got another artificial part added to her. And you wouldn't know that backstory necessarily and why he treats his daughters so differently unless you had seen Guardians 2. And that's why I love all of the buildup. That, I mean, this took a decade to get to this movie, and it's incredible that it brought in. It didn't have to reintroduce these characters. We didn't have to see an origin story. We didn't have to see, you know, it was just like full throttle all the way through.
Yeah. Well, and remember, she said you. Oh, go ahead.
No, it was jarring to me, laying back with my popcorn in this fantastic seat. When they superimposed the 10 when they did the Marvel Studios, it was jarring where I go, oh shit, I was literally 19 when Iron Man came out, and I could go back to my dorm room in college. I was like, God, has it been that long? It feels like yesterday.
Scott was only 45.
Yeah,
I was literally 24. Bite my ass.
Hey, by the way, I just want to throw it out there because we keep saying the writers are great, and we obviously don't know their names. Christopher Marcus
McFeely
and Steve McFeely. So
I just remember McFeely because of Mr. Rogers.
They were both Marcus and McFeely wrote The Winter Soldier and Civil War as well, so they're kind of the Russo's super team here.
Okay, good.
But not to jump you, Jeremy, but I like the character that I want to talk about is because we've now had 3 films with this guy, and he's just so perfect at this role. To me, Tom Holland delivers the best 10 seconds of this film.
Oh man, we're gonna jump there already.
No, don't do that.
But like,
we don't need agendas.
No, I'm just saying, like, you say who's your favorite character, and Tom Holland has cemented himself as Spider-Man. You know, Toby who, I honestly legitimately couldn't remember the name of the other guy that played him.
Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield.
Who did better than Toby?
And
yeah, he did.
That's debatable.
No, it's not.
And Tom Holland delivered so much in this film, and it's cool that they allowed Spider-Man to be such a vital part and to go along with Tony, because that ultimately makes sense. But you know, there's not a lot of screen time for a lot of our major heroes, and I'm glad that Tom Holland was able to carry what he was, because when they started filming these, he had just gotten the role of Spider-Man pretty much. I mean, like, he went from Civil War, did Homecoming, and then almost immediately went into filming Infinity War. So it wasn't like he had a lot of time with this character before he had to do this.
Well, that's a good point with Spider-Man. Let's talk about some more favorite moments that we had. I think that it's hard to choose like what your favorite action set piece is in this. I mean, like the battle on Titan for me is probably the one, because I mean, it has the most superpower combo like move, like bonus point moves that I've seen in this entire MCU. I mean, watching all of them work together, because like right when Mantis comes out and puts her hands on him, I'm just like, holy crap, that is a great plan. Like, good job, guys. Like that, I didn't even think about that. Like, yeah, she could try to put him to sleep just like Ego. And then just the crushingness of seeing like Peter have to know that Gamora is gone, and that Peter ruins that. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you know, the multiple Doctor Stranges out there, like I just thought that was one of the coolest visuals I've ever seen. And then of course the final battle with Iron Man that Thanos has is just so jarring, and just again, like his like kind of benevolence where he just puts his hand softly on Tony's head and he's just like, you have my respect, Stark. It's just an amazing set piece. Scott, what about you? What's your favorite action set piece in this?
Oh, action set piece? The war for Wakanda.
Wakanda, yes.
I mean, Titan was great, but I'm Team Cap, and watching Cap rip the shit out of alien dogs is amazing. But you know, there's so much going on in there that's just wonderful. You have them charging the fence or the barrier, and Steve actually isn't the fastest one in the field. T'Challa's got him beat by a few steps. You have Rocket and White Wolf now, Winter Soldier, playing along with each other. And of course,
man, how cool was that visual, man?
And you have the scene where Scarlet Witch gets smacked in the face and taken down, and the bad girl number one says you're alone or whatever, and you just hear Black Widow off screen. No, she's not. And then you have the chick fight, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, Thor showing up. I did all that.
Oh my gosh.
The entire set piece is just amazing. So
I don't know how many times, Scott, you had cheers in your first screening on Thursday, but
we were sold out, and that
was the biggest cheer when Thor shows up on the field. And of course, Ruffalo has the best line of all time. You guys are in so much trouble. And then, of course, I'll just one last thing on that. I love like Hemsworth in that scene where he just yells, "Bring me Thanos," and just runs. And that lightning strike is so epic. I mean, gosh, man, Raiden who?
Well, and my favorite line is, "I am Groot. I'm Steve Rogers."
That was great. All the awkward interactions are some of my favorite, like Thor and Star-Lord when Star-Lord's trying to act all tough.
Oh my gosh.
That was incredible. I mean, all these like heroes meeting for the first time, just so funny. Or even like Banner being like, wait, there's a Spider-Man and an Ant-Man? Like, like, what the hell? So I loved all the awkward interactions, and that provided those moments of levity that Marvel is just so good at. That's why their movies are awesome. It allows you to have these intense battle scenes where Loki's getting his neck snapped, and then a couple minutes later, you're laughing at the Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever the case may be. So that's, again, great on the writing, great on the direction.
Yeah, Nate, do you have any special ones you want to call out here?
As far as characters?
Characters, set pieces, anything. What worked for you?
Characters, I've been trying to think about who's my favorite character. I still think it's Thanos because just the way that they wrote him was incredible. But the other two, partially because I see it from an actor's perspective of like, what would I like to do? Tony Stark, the character they built for him, even as short as he was in that film, was wonderful because, pardon me, he brought back his PTSD. Like, he didn't realize that this was going to affect him in such a profound way, and they actually touched on that again. And then, Lord, I can't remember what I was going to say.
That's okay.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
We'll use the time stone in editing.
Yeah, exactly. I also just like how they, lit up each stone as he was using it. And I like that there were combos throughout the movie, that he would use two of the stones together. Right. I don't know, but it's just, oh God, I like that. You literally can't, I mean, you could talk about the battle with Proxima and Corvus when in Ireland. Like, God, that's even a great set piece.
Well, there's so much. I don't know where we are in the agenda. Are we moving past what we like now? Is that?
Yeah, we can go to gripes.
Well, so let me finish what I like here.
Yeah.
Real quick. With Scotland, if you watch this film, you'll notice the Avengers theme does not show up in this movie until Steve shows up behind that train.
Well, aside from the opening credit card, yes.
Okay, I don't count that. I mean, thematically, the Avengers theme does not show up until then, which tells me Team Cap was right, so that's wonderful. But it just goes to show that they've set this up so well that even thematically they understand what stuff's going through. But the other key point that I have in here is I love that every single character that you love. So if you love Gamora, she gets her time to shine. If you loved, Bucky, you get your time. Everyone walking out of this movie, unless you're a Vision fan, is going to walk out of this movie happy with what you got. And me being the Cap guy, that scene where Thanos is taking everybody out at the end, and he kind of has to realize when he's pushing this gauntlet down on Steve that Steve's holding his own. It was a continuation of the hammer scene from Avengers 2. Where everyone, where Thor looks and like, did he just move my hammer?
Yep.
Thanos is like, is he pushing me right now? So I just love that kind of stuff because my character got a moment and everyone else's character got a moment too.
One more minor thing I want to mention: the marketing of this movie is something to behold.
Agreed.
Because go back and watch those trailers. One, one, Hulk was in the Battle of Wakanda, so they added Hulk in there to throw people off because he never turned into Hulk again after he got his ass beat by Thanos. And then the second thing, if you look when he's, and I sent this to you guys earlier, when he's when Steve and him are fighting, he's missing 2 of the stones in the Infinity Gauntlet. Missing 3 of the stones in the Infinity Gauntlet in the trailer, and that way it kind of like faked you out a little bit. Like it's stuff like that I didn't notice, but I bet everyone on the internet would have noticed if he had all the Infinity Stones.
Absolutely.
By the time. So wonderful job of, so many times recently in particular, the trailer spoils the whole movie. Good job, Marvel, on this trailer.
Well, and that did 2 things for me. With the stones missing, I thought that Cap was going to die early. And I thought Wakanda was going to happen early because that one little thing where I'm like, he's only got 2 stones. This is happening really early in the film. You're right. And for all those folks who yelled at me when I said in other movies that won't go mention that directors have no say and it's just the marketing folks. No, when you actually know what you're doing with your marketing, you can play with the marketing to make it work for you. So don't complain to me that, they ruined my movie in the trailer. Well, that's your fault.
Yeah. Nate, you have something?
Yeah. When I saw the movie, there was one scene that stuck out in my head and this partially goes into the gripes, but it's also just a
good transition.
Nice.
Thank you. When he gets the Soulstone, after he kills Gamora, and this little, etheric light beams him up to wherever the fuck. I was thinking about that. I go, I'm pretty sure that's the ancestral plane of Wakanda. And it would make sense why the Soulstone is there because all the stones of the ancestral kings of Wakanda have lived there. And there's nobody there for Thanos because, obviously. But it stuck out with me. I was like, this seems like a weird transition. It only lasts for about 10 seconds, but why was this in there? And then it just kind of clicked. Am I wrong?
No, I hear you, but wait for Avengers 4. And I'll go into my theories when we get there, but I think you're going to get more because you get more of that at the end too when he talks to Baby Gamora, who I don't think is Baby Gamora.
Right. So I think no, but that's good. So that's a good transition into our little gripes and complaints.
But real quick.
Oh, Scott, go ahead.
Does he mention Voimir again? Red freaking skull.
Red freaking skull.
I know. They're like Hugo Weaving's like, I'm done with this Marvel crap. I'm out of here. And Marvel's like,
no,
he's done.
Figured this out. This was not Hugo Weaving in this.
Really?
Jeremy and I were sitting next to each other in the movie, and right when they went to that scene and the voice started, I turned to Jeremy. I was like, that really sounds like Hugo Weaving.
Yes, he did.
And then he did a good job, man.
Son of a bitch. Okay.
Yeah, it's some guy from The Walking Dead who does impressions, and like they hired him up, and that's who Red Skull is now. But that was a great little Easter egg there.
That's funny.
Yeah, so
Hugo Weaving really was like, get me the hell out of here.
Hugo Weaving really is done.
After Megatron and Red Skull, he's done. He's out.
Well, we just needed the voice template. Now we can just do impressions.
Well, that's one of my gripes. Where's Hugo Weaving? He's supposed to be chained in Marvel Studios. What is he doing?
Exactly. But let's get into what kind of didn't work for us. Honestly, there's not much from me on this front. I like how they balanced everything. The biggest complaint I keep reading online is that it's either overstuffed, which I think is just bull, or that they jump around a little too much for the casual viewer. And look, our own Brandon Davis went and saw this today. And he did say, because he is not a big, MCU fan head like we are, but he said, he loved it. He thought it was a great movie, but he did have trouble keeping track of everyone, because he didn't know half of these characters. He didn't see any of their movies. But I guess the thing that I say to those who are like, oh, you didn't give enough for the uninitiated viewer, they've given you initiation for 10 years. All right. Like, I think that Marvel has earned the right to just jump into the story and assume all the players on the board.
They've earned that right because if you take any other franchise, take The Lord of the Rings, for example, you wouldn't start off at The Return of the King and expect to know what's going on, and then that you don't know what's going on. This has been 10 years in the making. Do your research.
Yeah. Craig, you got any gripes?
I do, but to the film critics that say that this is overstuffed, again, I just think that they need to read a comic book because, and that's not me being insulting to them, but this watches like the pages of a comic book. You've got, it's almost like you could almost make the different set pieces be individual issues of a comic book that's all coming together. And so I'm not just, that's not just me being pretentious. I'm just saying, like, the people that think that there's too much going on in here just need to pick up a comic book and see that they nailed that. I'm sorry. Nate, go ahead. Once Nate goes, I've got a couple of little gripes.
Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
For as many people they have in play, I think they transitioned very, very well. They put enough time on certain key aspects, switched back to the things they had to, but didn't stay too long. It didn't drag. I don't understand how it wasn't easy to keep track of what was going on, because there were certain times where I go, where the hell are they at with Tony and Doctor Strange? That's my other character, Doctor Strange. Wonderful character.
Oh, man, yeah.
It's so much so that it made me go watch Doctor Strange again yesterday.
Yeah, I do want to go watch Doctor Strange again. It's on Netflix, right?
Yes, it is.
But they did a wonderful job of transitioning, and I just don't understand how it was overstuffed, because with as much going on, they did a really good job.
Yeah. So real quick, minor gripes. I already mentioned one in jest, but even if Wanda somehow learned to not have a Russian accent over the last 2 years,
you really don't like this.
Well, but I mean, like, no, I mean, it's a gripe that I have. It's not like it ruined the movie for me.
Yeah.
But they basically were just like, Elizabeth Olsen, you kind of suck at a Russian accent, so don't worry about it. Don't do it anymore. But my thing is, like, why not just have her still do a sort of crappy Russian accent? Because my thing is, even if she had turned into this person who was supposed to be hiding out, but she was in, like, intimate scenes, like literally intimate scenes with Vision, and I don't think that she would have to have that cover on while she was with Vision. So that kind of took me out of her opening scene a little bit in Scotland. My second gripe, and this is to Scott's favorite point, but I'm a Captain America fan, and I do hope that Avengers 4, this movie followed Tony as kind of pseudo the leader of the Avengers. I hope that Cap has a more substantial role in Avengers 4, and I think Scott has a response to that.
No, I fully agree with you, but that's why they're playing towards that. And again, I'll get into more of that. But Tony didn't get the Avengers theme. Cap did. Yeah, this is an Avengers movie, and that theme did not come in until he showed up on screen.
That's a good point.
He is the leader of the Avengers. This is not an Avengers film. This is a Thanos film. Your Avenger film is coming up in May of 2019. And I'm looking forward to it.
And so those are my minor gripes. Nothing major. Definitely did not ruin the movie by any means for me. But no film is quote unquote perfect. And I would have loved to see more Captain America in a already long film. I could have spent 10 more minutes just looking at Chris Evans and ogling him. And then
Pirate Angel Chris Evans.
Oh, Pirate Angel, yeah.
No, that was
Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth, yeah.
Wrong Chris.
All right, so those are my gripes.
All right, Scott, do you have any gripes?
I'm good.
Oh, good. I will say that, like, I think that I understand how it could, like, even for us as MCU fanboys, it's, Peter Dinklage showing up there, as awesome as that is, absent any context from any film whatsoever. I mean, it is kind of just like, oh, there's Peter Dinklage. If you don't know the comics and all that stuff, it can be kind of like oh, right, him. Okay.
Well, I disagree with that, though, because they set it up. They said, well, you have to go to the Star Forge. That's where my hammer was made. I need a new hammer. And then when they're there, Dinklage says, there were 300 of us here. Mm-hmm. He made me build the gauntlet, and then he killed all the people, and he meddled my hand so I could never make anything again.
Right.
So, I mean, what more setup do you want?
Well, no, I mean, it's just maybe it's just the fact that there's, like, giant dwarves, like, it's like that was kind of just like I love it. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it that, like, Peter Dinklage, who in real life is, like, up to Chris Hemsworth's waistline, and yet now he's just towering over him like 20 feet. I love that. But, it's just kind of like, it took me a second to just be like, wait a minute, Peter Dinklage. Oh, that's awesome. But right, he's that guy.
How they solved that was they brought Rocket along, who had no context at all.
Yeah, that's true.
And they allowed him to be they allowed him to be the vehicle by which he goes like, what the hell are you talking about turning on a star? And he's like, how are you going to do that? And then, the great lasso scene.
Yeah.
But Rocket was the perfect partner to go along. And Groot was there too, of course, but Rocket was the perfect partner to go along with Thor.
Right. Nate, do you got any gripes?
Yeah. Everybody was super stoked about Thor's eye patch, which was a nice callback to Odin.
Yeah.
And when they gave him the eye, it was funny.
Yeah.
It felt like they took criticism a little too hard. Where somebody's like, "God, an eye patch? Why would you do that?" They're like,
okay.
You know what? Okay, we'll fix that. Here's an eye. Just plug that fucker right back into your head, because that'll just work right away.
I can feel you on that. I do love the joke is very solid.
I was watching the premiere because I'm a nerd, so I watched 2 hours of a premiere with really bad hosts. But they asked him, "So how is it like filming with the eye patch?" And he's like, I didn't. It was CGI'd after. So they never even had him wear the damn thing ever.
Why not just stick to your guns and say, you know what, this is him now?
I don't know, but you're staying so true to Rocket's persona as a kleptomaniac of artificial limbs.
I'll get that arm.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that arm. I'll tell you this, man. Through the 3 films that I've seen him in, Bradley Cooper's best performance of his career, I think, is Rocket Raccoon. I mean,
maybe Silver Linings Playbook.
Okay, fine.
But let me say though, yeah, I love Bradley Cooper's voice, but let's not forget that Rocket is not Bradley Cooper. Rocket is Sean Gunn. That dude is working double time in the Guardians films, and he does amazing work with that mocap. I mean, you want to have some fun? Look at some old pictures from Guardians 1 where Drax is petting Sean Gunn's blue head.
Yep. That's pretty good. All right. Well, we've talked about some of the things that we love, but obviously the big crux of this movie is the incredible ending of this movie. Again, massive spoilers if you haven't left already. I mean, I don't know what you're still doing here if you haven't seen it, but let's talk about the deaths and let's frame it this way. And I know what the number one answer is going to be here. And since Craig brought it up, I will let him go first on this. But let's frame the question this way. Which death at the end of this movie was the most crushing for you? And if you agree with Craig's, go ahead. You can extrapolate, but then try and choose another one. So, Craig, go ahead and make us relive the most intense trauma of the last 5 minutes of this movie.
I think that, first of all, I would say some people would say this is a gripe. And I think that people are going to come around, like the people that really want to be cool and say that they don't like this movie because they're the outsider to this film. The thing that they're going to say is wrong with the film is that it's obvious that all these heroes are coming back because of the contracts and, Black Panther just made $1 billion, but that doesn't matter if it's acted well, all these deaths that happened. And to me, I brought up Tom Holland already, and I loved his performance even before this death, but legitimately that, it was emotional though. I was texting with Brian from After the Hype, and he said he really channeled David Tennant in Doctor Who. But my thing is, he
plagiarized David Tennant in Doctor Who.
But here's my thing: it's a completely different type of acting. Yeah. Tennant's delivery of that line, "I don't want to go," was so sincere and thoughtful. And Tom Holland's delivery of almost the exact same line was pure fear. And he was a child. He was a child clinging to his father, and saying, and it's only because you've seen the relationship that Tony Stark has with Peter Parker over these last 3 films. And we griped about it in Homecoming. Why is Tony Stark in this movie so much? But this is why, because he could deliver this 10 seconds that just absolutely destroys you.
Well, and the writing, and Nate already mentioned the writing was really good here around the whole thing, but the writing did it again because they built up that ending for you. You have Tony trying to get Spider-Man out of the ship at the beginning, and then he does a little, "You're now an Avenger," and Tom Holland stands up really tall just for a second.
Right.
And after he says, I don't want to go, his last words is, "I'm sorry," because he failed. He not only is he scared, he failed as an Avenger. The one thing he wanted the most, he failed.
Yeah, and I mean, you could also like take that "I'm sorry" in the direction of, I'm sorry I didn't get off the ship, I didn't, listen to you type thing. But then again, you don't know if he could very well still be one of the half of the universe that gets wiped out at the end of this. But yeah, I mean, I've watched it a couple of times now, and it's just Tom Holland. Just the acting chops is just so good there. And you're right, Craig. It's literally just a child who cannot defend himself, just clinging to his father and just saying like, "Please save me, please save me." And I mean, like, it gets me teary-eyed even right now just thinking about it. Tom Holland, you son of a bitch. But I'll tell you one that really stuck with me, and I don't want to take the other obvious one because I think Nate and Scott will probably hit it. Aside from loving the way that they kind of switcherooed Black Panther and Okoye, I'm going to call out Dave Bautista here because, like, Drax as a character is great, but he's always kind of worked because Dave Bautista is like not an actor yet, like he is kind of new to this acting thing, and they kind of give him just enough to highlight what he's great at as an actor so far. But when he's fading away and he so softly just says Quill, and you can see just a little bit of anguish on his face, I just thought to myself, like, I think I see Dave Bautista, like, becoming an actor in the same way you could see The Rock like years before him. I know it's an easy comparison because of wrestling, but I just think that like that was a scene where all of a sudden I was like, wow, Drax, like Dave Bautista, I see what you're doing there. So that one really kind of hit me, but I think there's another one that either Nate or Scott will hit. Scott, why don't you go next?
For me, because again, I assumed Cap was going to be gone. When we see Bucky be when he's the first one we see go, for me, that told me two things. One, that Cap's not going anywhere because they wouldn't take Bucky and Cap. It doesn't make any sense. But just seeing Bucky go quickly and just like, oh shit, this is happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Bucky and Falcon. They took
they took both
the
Captain Americas off the table.
And when you look at it, aside from Rocket and Nebula, all of Phase 1 is still there, and that's it.
Yeah. Nate, what about you? What's the most crushing death for you?
Well, obviously Spider-Man, but to go off my Doctor Strange hard-on, when he was disappearing, he said, "This was the only way." This
was the only way. Oh, man, we got to talk more about that in a second.
Like, oh, shit. Well, I'm going to talk for a second because I'll probably forget because I'm tired and my mind is mush right now. When he knew that it was going to happen, he saw it come, and he knew that was the only way to happen. So when he disappeared, he had no remorse because he thought it was the best thing to do. But to go forward with that, I read an article where they're like, what happens now? Because we'll get into the whole burnt gauntlet and shit like that. But they're kind of extrapolating what to do next. And they said that the smartest thing for Thanos to do would be to scatter the 6 stones and never be able to find them again, or have the Avengers try and hunt them down, which would be the perfect lead-in to the next phase for Avengers, where for Doctor Strange 2, which of course is going to happen, where the Sorcerer Supreme upcoming is gone, and they go, well, how do we get him back? And then that's how they get him. They have to figure out how to get him back, or something along those lines. But
sure, that's going to be one of the theories.
Yeah, as long.
And we'll get into those.
I don't want the happy ending at the end of the next one where it's like, everybody's back. Kiss.
I'm shaking my head.
Scott, you hold that. You hold that thought for a little while.
I'm shaking my head.
We're going to go in depth on that.
Before we go, can we talk Loki and?
Well, no, I was going to get there just now.
Okay.
Well, first of all, though, none of you guys said the one that I thought, which was Groot fading away and Rocket just walking up to him saying no, 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 and just like trying to hold on to him for one last time. Like that was kind of where all of a sudden I was like, geez, man, this is getting real. But no, Craig, you're right, because there are the ones who died in the snap out at the end, which are Bucky, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Falcon, Groot, Mantis, Drax, Star-Lord, Doctor Strange, and Scarlet Witch. Whew. But then I think there's another group in this film that are the ones who are, even if you want to go with the theory that these people are not really dead and they're coming back, there are 4 that I think are really dead for good. Dead for dead. Those would be Loki. Those would be Heimdall. You've got Gamora, obviously, and I think Vision. I think those 4 are gone for good. So, Craig, you wanted to talk about one of those, though.
Well, I would say, I mean, obviously, Tom Hiddleston has done such a great job of playing Loki, and he's the guy that the MCU is always knocked for not having good villains, and everyone's like, but Loki. And that's true. Loki has done a great job of being a villain, and then being a hero, and then being a villain, and then being both in Thor Ragnarok. So, you know, seeing him go right at the beginning of this film was jarring because obviously you knew from the trailers that Thor was fine, but is the way that they did his death scene, where like the bloodshot eyes and him, you know, the last line that he delivered to Thanos, but then Thanos saying there will be no resurrection this time or whatever, and just throwing him down. It was a very brutal death, only to probably be topped by Gamora getting thrown off. So yeah, it just absolutely incredible, the amount of emotion that was brought out of those two deaths that was setting up for everything else.
Gamora's not dead.
You don't think?
Yeah, I mean,
no, Gamora's. I don't. It's not a thing. Gamora is not dead. She's in the Soulstone. Period.
Well,
the end. Okay. So no, I mean, I don't know where we are on the agenda.
No, this is it. We were talking about the deaths, like the most pressing deaths. So.
Yeah, no, Vision's not dead. I will give you Heimdall, and I will give you Loki, because both of those actors want to be done. Chris Hemsworth, whatever. Todd Hiddleston is going to be James Bond. They just haven't announced it yet.
It's actually a damn good call.
Yeah, I mean, and Idris Elba should have been James Bond.
Either one of those two, yeah.
He was actually looked at 10 years ago. He should have been it. But Gamora is in the Soulstone, because at the end, when we go into the ethereal whatever again, and the baby Gamora asks him, "What was it? Was it worth it? And what did you? What did it cost you?" That is Gamora trying to turn him, which we'll get into later on. And Vision, we were told, guys, most of what Vision is not the Mind Stone. All you gotta do is fix his head, which Shuri is still around, and she was already working on it. So if you think Vision's gone, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, by the way, quick question for everyone. Do you think Shuri actually finished his reprogramming?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was closing it down. She's done. This girl is better than Banner and Tony Stark combined.
Wait, you said, but you said, 1 second, Scott. You said that she's still around. It never cut back to her, did it?
My philosophy is on this: if we don't see him disappear, they're there. Because if they wanted us to know a character was gone, they would have showed us. They show us everyone disappearing.
Oh, that's true.
This is why M'Baku is still there, because we saw him and not disappearing. If they didn't disappear on screen, they're around.
But the only character that they ever covered that is actually going to be gone in dialogue, the only character they covered, like, no, that's it, is Heimdall, because they said, no, this axe can now summon the Frostbridge. Like, there is no reason for him anymore.
Nate's right. Yep.
He's gone.
Yep, that's how Thor got back to Earth so quickly, was he summoned
the Stormbreaker can open the Bifrost now.
And maybe the actor that hated the MCU more than Hugo Weaving was Idris Elba.
Contract
but damn, you love that money, man.
I'm out of that contract.
Yeah, but no, I mean, again, I think the only two deaths we saw were those two Asgardians when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I definitely think they're gone, but I think it would be a ballsy move to keep Gamora dead.
What's with the bloodlust?
No. I'm just saying in this one way. Well, there's a real world application, because she's going to be busy making Avatar movies for the next 20 years. So, but the thing about it is, I don't know, like the crux of everything. And actually this goes into what our next topic here is, which is that battle on Titan, and how really, when you think about it, half the universe being wiped out is freaking Star-Lord's fault. All right. It is his fault. All right, because that plan is working. They've got it going. They're getting the gauntlet off. They still almost get the gauntlet off, and Star-Lord has to ruin it. I understand why. I do. I get it. There's a different, and somebody on another show pointed out, like, well, he was ready to kill her himself. I was like, okay, there's a difference between agreeing to, not have the love of your life like tortured by some evil person, and then finding out that evil person killed them anyway. So there's a difference there, but it is really his fault.
Here's the frustrating thing, though. A lot of reviewers out there have been saying, well, that was out of character. That was completely in character for Star-Lord. This is the same guy who, as soon as Ego said, I had to put that tumor in her head, within a second, he's blasting the hell out of his face. This guy is somebody who never thinks about the long term. He's always thinking about what he feels right then. So, of course, he's going to be the one that screws it up, which is why I'm not a big fan of Star-Lord as a character. Now, I love the Guardians, but I think he's an idiot.
But I think someone should ultimately point out that every villain in the MCU belongs to Tony Stark because he's failed at every encounter that he's had. Hashtag Team Cap.
All right, Nate, what do you got?
This goes back to me to the writing as far as like understanding, like the best way anybody can connect to a movie is real world application.
Yeah.
And Star-Lord has a real world application because he fucked everything up. And he did things impulsively, he didn't think or anything like that. But if you think about this psychologically, a man who never had a father, a mother who died, who was abducted, his father, surrogate father, died before his eyes. He's never had anybody love him. And then he knows that the only person in his life who loves him was killed by this man. Impulse would instantly take you over. Like, it's a real-world application, and you have to feel for that. You go, no, don't do it, but I totally understand why you're doing it. Yeah. And that makes you feel for the character because that's a real life.
And also, I just want to call out just all of the actors in this. It's just like, God, you're playing with, like, these, like, crazy big ideas like this and these special effects. Like, Brolin's there in a freaking, like, onesie with bulbs all over his face. And yet, when Tony is yelling out to him, like, Quill, don't do it, like, it's so like, yeah, like you believe every freaking second of this. There's never any sense of detachment in any of these movies where superheroes are fighting aliens on a moon of Saturn. I mean, like, it's just unbelievable how well how hard these actors commit to stuff like that.
Well, as much as you guys hit on Robert Downey Jr. playing the father figure of Spider-Man, his line to Quill when Quill's disappearing, steady Quill,
yeah.
He's just trying, like, dude, you're going to die. Calm down.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
He is the mentor figure now. I agree with Craig. He cannot win a fight to save his life, but he is the mentor figure.
It is. And I mean, like, I find it interesting that Tony is left alone with just Nebula there. I thought they were going to leave him, like, completely alone on Titan. So I'm kind of cool. I'm kind of glad that they didn't, like, that they kept him there. Go ahead, Nate.
I'm sorry. Speaking on Tony again, something that they touched on very instantly at the beginning, which they never really touched on or used, because I don't think he ever used his chest beam throughout the entire movie, was him putting his reactor back in his chest, and they said, like, you don't need that. He goes, well, I might.
Yeah. Like today.
He doesn't use it, though, because he never uses that beam that he used in a couple other movies.
What?
So I'm wondering what that's going to do as far as, like you said, Nebula's the only one left with him. Is she going to somehow make him somehow mechanical by fixing a part in him? Because it was a plot point, but they never touched on it again. Which, again, we have to wait for the next movie.
They did hit on it, though. They said that the nanites are housed in there. That's why you put it back. It's nanites. So it's because you look at
take on the bleeding edge armor.
It's when you look at it, the nanites come out of it, so they're housing his armor. I do like the fact that they left Tony exactly where he was 10 years ago in film time. That he's alone, somewhat in a desert with just a whole bunch of parts around him. Go do something to get yourself home.
Oh, good point.
That's a very damn good point, Scott.
I have
That's
one
why
every
people come to the front row for all these hot takes. Hot takes.
Scott, I hate admitting
selling
that
hot takes.
God damn it, you're right.
Hold on, I didn't quite hear you, Nate. Can I hear that again?
Yeah, we need a clear version of that, please.
I hate admitting that you're right, but God damn it, you're right.
Victory is mine.
Okay, so here's the thing. All of our heroes are disappearing, and now Nate's saying Scott's right. This definitely is the end of the universe, people.
I'm leaving now.
All right, well, before we get into some predictions, two more quick questions. Well, one quick question. Let's do the post-credit scene first because the next one's part of prediction. So let's talk about the post-credit scene real quick. Only one. Nick Fury, Mariah Hill, they're driving around. They're seeing all the crap happening. Car crashes, helicopter crashes, and then Mariah fades in front of him. And I love, just that Nick Fury is still so calm in this situation. He's just like, oh, crap, okay, I got to go do something. And, of course, he gives out the pager of all things. and he pages to the Captain Marvel signal. What did we all think of this post-credit scene? Scott, let's start with you.
It reminded me how much I love The Leftovers from HBO. Did anyone else watch The Leftovers?
I did not. I hear good things.
Check it out. It's only 3 seasons, but same idea. People just disappear. But I was very good and very quiet in my theater the entire time, just watching, cheering when the rest of the people cheered. But when that scene started rolling and he pulls out the little pager from Intergalactic whatever, I was yelling at my screen like a little kid, call her, call her, call her. Because I need a Marvel Wonder Woman for my daughter, and I'm so happy that she's going to come save the day. It makes me very happy.
Thinking you're getting one come November. Nate, what did you think of the post-credit scene?
March, sir.
March.
The only thing I could take away from the post-credit screen, like obviously, of course, Marvel Woman. Did I say that right?
Captain Marvel.
There you go. Like I said, I'm tired.
Marvel Women's a little on the nose.
Yeah.
It wouldn't stop the comics before.
It was a nice homage to Samuel Jackson in his earlier career.
Yeah,
goes,
definitely.
I was like, oh, Pulp Fiction.
Yep.
That's cute. So it was a fun thing, but it really didn't do too much for me. We all knew it was going to happen, but this was just like the teaser where it's like, yeah, this is happening now. You knew it. Just, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Craig,
yeah,
what
that's
about?
the only thing I took away from the post-credit. That was really it.
I'm really glad that they had one, because this was one of the first movies in a long time where right at the end of that film, there was silence in the theater for an extended amount of time because we just saw all these heroes die. So to see Sam Jackson kind of bring it home a little bit with a little bit of comedy in there, and then to have that hopeful inspiration of Captain Marvel being signaled, that to me was a great way to end this movie and not leave us in a despair. It comes back to that I think that it's good to leave your fans hopeful and leave them wanting more, and had it just been all death, and then I kept saying, maybe this is the one where they don't have a post-credit scene.
It would have been ballsy.
And that I think that this worked out better than that would have.
Yeah, and
I talked to Jeremy or you, Craig. I was like, it would be the smartest thing for them to do to not have a post-credit scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And just leave you in limbo going, oh, shit.
Just leave you with Thanos smiling at the sunset.
Yeah, which technically does, because nothing really happens.
I hear what you're saying. I was thinking to myself, because we didn't get a mid-credit scene, so I was thinking, well, this could actually happen. This could be very ballsy. But that's not the MCU. The MCU is about optimism and hope. And we had a very dark ending. And again, I think Avengers 4 is going to be a very optimistic film. And again, I'll get into more of that when we get into what we think. But that end scene for me was turning a corner, saying, okay, we have light coming back. Here we go.
Yeah, and you go back to the Phase 3 announcement where they announced Captain Marvel as a movie, and Kevin Feige makes special mention in that announcement that like she is the most powerful being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something like that. He said one of, and I love that you're right. Like it's a beacon of hope, and that it's that she can be the difference in taking on an Infinity Gauntlet wielding Thanos in anything. She is that powerful, at least in the comic books. So I think that that's a really cool thing they're doing too, to give her that aura, because we're definitely going to see her origin in her solo movie. But then where has she been for the last 20 years?
Yeah. And in case anyone doesn't know that, it's going to be 1990s in the movie. So, which we just got set photos today of de-aged Sam Jackson, and it's kind of creepy looking.
Pretty crazy. Okay, let's get to this last question here before predictions. I just want to, as quick as possible on this, is the failure of the Avengers to stop Thanos, is this a part of Doctor Strange's one path to victory he saw?
Yes.
And can just
go ahead.
People online are saying it was all about Tony. It was all about Tony. Tony has survived. I completely disagree with that. It had nothing to do with Tony surviving. Tony surviving was in his. He knew that was going to happen because he's seen the outcome. But the whole idea was he knew Thanos had to win. And the reason why Thanos has to win is because if they fight to the last man and women and die, and then Thanos snaps, there is no one left to resist. Mm. So Doc knew, I have to make sure some of the Avengers survive. So to make sure...
This is limiting the amount of casualties.
Exactly. So to do that, I need to give him the stone as soon as possible so he can get what he wants, make the snap, and then there are more people who survive. Because it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
That's very Harry Truman dropping a nuke of you.
So, Craig, do you have any more to say on that, or do you just think it's true?
No, I think it's true.
All right, Nate, anything else on that?
No, not really.
All right. Well, then let's get into what everybody wants to talk about here. Avengers 4 predictions. Man, I listed out 5 that I can think of a direction where they might go with this. So if it's all right with you guys, let's just talk about those because those are the ones I'm seeing most widely distributed online. Let's get the worst one out of the way first. Which is basically time travel, which is, we've seen set photos of Steve Rogers in his first Avengers outfit. Like maybe they go back in time and turn back the clock so that everything goes there. Let's just start with this one. I think this is a terrible idea. Like, I think it would be such a cheat and such a cheap way to do it. Scott, what do you think about that?
I think you're doing too much of a black and white here. There's a spectrum. There's going to be time travel, because the time stone is available to them. There's going to be use of the space stone and getting people to move around space. It doesn't mean that time travel is going to be the whole thing. We know that if by flashback or if by time travel, and the fact that the set photo that you mentioned where they're wearing their costumes from Avenger 1, they both have that little wrist thing, tells me that they're themselves in the past. So there's going to be time travel. But give the writers some credit. Just because there's going to be time travel doesn't mean there's going to be a reset in that manner.
Yeah, I think like if time travel was the only mechanism they used, I'd be disappointed.
The MCU has never had, at least for Avenger films, has never had one thing to lean on as it's going to be that. So yeah, there's going to be time travel, but I don't see that as a bad thing.
Okay,
let's be perfectly honest here. Everyone's coming back, so get over it and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away from their sacrifice either, and from the jarringness of that scene. Craig, what about you? What do you think about time travel as the main motive for this one?
One of my favorite games of my lifetime was Turtles in Time. So I think that Avengers in Time would make one hell of a video game, and I'm actually pretty okay with it.
This is why the bad guy in Avengers 4 is not Thanos. You know who it's going to be, Craig. Say it.
What?
You know who the bad guy for Avengers 4 is going to be. It's not Thanos. Say it. Time travel. Kang the Conqueror.
Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah. I'm laying it out here right now.
Well, and this is another theory that we have here. So I'm calling this one basically Thanos' regret or joining forces, which is that the idea here is that there is a threat that is bigger than Thanos even, that emerges because of his actions wiping out half the universe, that leaves the universe vulnerable to an even greater threat, like a Kang the Conqueror, like a Galactus, like something like that. So what do we think of this one? Craig, why don't you go first? What do you think of maybe the Avengers having to join forces with Thanos?
To me, this would be cheap. I wouldn't like this as much. I get that we have a little bit of sympathy for Thanos, but at the same time, like I think that is a little bit too cliche of a way to go about things. And maybe Scott's right. Maybe there is a moment where in order to save Gamora, because I'm with you, Scott, I don't think she's dead, that he sacrifices himself or does something to that effect if there's a bigger bad out there than him. But I don't know. I hope that it's not like, okay, this is literally the only time. I promise you, this is the only time that I'll mention this. But I hope that it's
I was the only one not to mention.
10 seconds. I just got to, it's a good analogy. I just hope that it's not thrown away much in the way that Doomsday was in BVS, where you've got a great bad character who is shoved into the last act of a movie because everybody decided to be sort of happy-go-lucky. That's literally all I'm going to say about it. I only used it as an analogy. I'm not commenting further.
Well, there you go. Scott, what do you think about this possibility?
For those playing the home game, when we started this, I promised I was not going to bring DC up, and then everyone else brought up DC. So, as the DC hater in the room, I'm good. I can definitely see, Craig, I see where you're coming from, but I can definitely see that being the theme, because here's the thing. The theme of this film, and when I say this film, I mean Avengers 3 and Avengers 4, because I see this as one film. They just couldn't sit us down in the theater for 5 hours, although I would have loved it.
I would have.
The theme of this film, Tony says it exactly. We do not trade a life. And then they said, well, but you had to trade your life back in World War II. But then War Machine says, yes, but you have a choice. He didn't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a choice, you do not trade a life.
Right.
This is where that theme is taking us, potentially, and that is Thanos traded a life, and it was a mistake. And when he starts having a discussion with the soul of Gamora, who is on his glove at the moment, he's going to realize that what he thought was the right move in trading trillions of lives for the end game is not correct. Now, is he going to, put on an Avengers A and go to town? No. But I think at the end, because that is the character that they've been setting up, he is not a villain. He is a crazy titan who wants to make the universe better. Yes. This is where his arc could lead, and it would make sense. Would it upset a lot of people, including John in the chat room? Yes.
I was going to say,
it's a good arc for a character.
I know. Thank you for bringing up John in the chat room. We've been neglecting the chat. I did want to say that John Pickett of 217 Radio and Geek Awakens fame said, I agree with Craig. No context needed.
That's all we need.
He said he agreed with me, and I wanted to make sure I called out that Geek Awakens and 217 Radio are wonderful, and I hope you listen to them.
Very much so. Go listen to Geek Awakens. Okay, so here's another question for you. What is the possibility that we are venturing into the Soulstone and that is where all of our departed friends are residing?
Did I get a chance to answer that question first?
No, yes, you didn't. Go for it.
This is predictions, right?
Yes, we're in predictions.
Well, I think I said it earlier. I think the best thing, and this is just from a writing perspective, as far as like the future of what Marvel could possibly be, don't bring everybody back right away. I don't want that kissy huggy, oh, we're all here. Let some people be gone. And then bring them back in other movies. I mean, of course a Doctor Strange movie could work because they bring him back and then he has all this recollection of what it was like being gone. But I think we were going to talk about this dark reality theory. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're coming up on that one.
Okay. Well, hit on it then. But don't bring them all back. Have this cliffhanger at the end of it, this dark cliffhanger saying, like, where are our friends? Where do we go from here? Because we beat Thanos. We got all the Soulstones back if they're going to do that. We have all this. But where is everybody? And pan out, black out, and go like, God, what's going to happen next? Which would be a perfect setup for the next phase that they're going to do. Because if you just make everything happy-go-lucky towards the end, everybody's back, that's a whitewash. Like, how do you pick up from there? Yep. So my prediction is that they're not going to bring everybody back. Some people will come back, of course, but don't whitewash it. It's a hope,
Definitely. Craig, what do you think of are we venturing into the Soulstone? Are we bringing all of them back at once?
I tend to think that we are, because I think that, just look at the people that left. And this is me being cynical, sure, whatever. But Black Panther just made $1 billion. T'Challa is not dead. He is coming back. Look at Tom Holland. again, Spider-Man is on the up and up. They're not going to
filming this summer.
They're not going to just let him be vanquished. Look at all these characters, and to me, it doesn't matter necessarily if they, like, obviously it's a big deal if they all come back, whatever. But I think that there could still be that one, and Scott's going to say this is bloodlusty, but that one sacrificial death, whether that be Tony or it be Cap. I think that if that were to happen, then maybe it would appease some of the people that are not looking for that happy-go-lucky ending to this whole thing. And it shows that there was a true sacrifice to be made. I still think maybe some of those old Avengers that are left on Earth, and I know we're going to talk about the whole dark reality thing, but maybe that, I looked at I think one of you in the theater, and I was just like, what if the people that left are actually like the ones that are alive? You know what I mean? Like, what if, because if you look at it, it was almost a perfect split, new versus old. So anyway, but I do think that most, if not all of them, are coming back, and I do think that that's a good thing. I don't think that it cheapens the movie to me, because it still shows that and that's why I think Thanos joining them, that to me would cheapen it, because it would show that Thanos, not only did he not succeed because we got all these people back, but he also is a good guy. Like that to me
Thanos
would be
was
the
an Avenger at some point. Is that correct?
Everyone was an Avenger at some point.
I mean,
Galactus was an Avenger.
That giant cloud in the outer space?
Oh,
No, not Fox's Galactus, sir.
Not the
Marvel's
cloud.
Galactus.
Oh, my bad.
Scott, do you have any quick thoughts on the Soulstone?
My thoughts on the Soulstone kind of interact with every little piece of your agenda, so I'm sorry if I skip ahead.
No, that's fine.
First off, let me rewind a bit. Because Catherine and John in the chat room both mentioned that if Thanos becomes good, it cheapens and upsets them, and I hear you on that. And what I said in the chat room was, don't get me wrong, even if he does start seeing the light at the end of Avengers 4, somebody is going to take out the head. Because that is foreshadowing beyond.
Should have gone there, Thor. Come on, man.
But no, everyone is going to come back, and I'm okay with it. Nate, you said we need that film where our friends are gone. What's next? You just had that a few hours ago when you watched this. That was the whole point. That was.
Go ahead, Nate.
I disagree. I mean, yes, our friends are gone, but there's no resolution to it. Our friends are gone. Yes, where do we go from here? That's what we're going to see. It's not resolved.
Yeah, I think Nate's right. I think we have to have at least a good chunk of Avengers 4 where we do kind of feel the hopelessness. I think that does have to permeate there. And look, I mean, we've all made mention of this because this kind of goes into the last theory. But I think we all agree that the Avengers trying to find the stones, like Thanos scattering the stones to keep them safe, and then the Avengers finding them, is a bad idea.
I don't agree with that. No,
really?
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Okay.
As far as a cinematic universe idea, that'd be perfect.
So you want the same movie just in reverse?
Not necessarily. I mean, they could. I mean, you make a good point. Yeah, maybe my idea is fallible, but as a villain, why would you want to keep those? Because you'd be a target. Why not say my mission is done, scatter them, and go, this is the life I want to live now? That was really the final scene, because he was sitting there going, now I'm done. And he could scatter those and go like, this is the life I want to live now. Because it all goes back to his idea of what he wants to do. All he wants to do is level out the playing field for the entire galaxy to make the galaxy worthwhile living in.
Yeah, I mean, like, you think about it, he even said that to somebody. Somebody asked him, maybe it was Gamora, but, what happens if you actually do this? What do you do then? And it was Doctor Strange. So what do you do after you've accomplished your goal? And he said, then I rest. And it's just like, and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe. So you're right there.
That's interesting.
That's
a Christian reference. I never thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
6 stones, and on the 7th day he rests.
Ooh,
interesting.
Look at that. All right, well, then let's get into what I think is the most interesting theory of the ones that I've been finding. Oh, Scott, did you have anything to say on that?
Do I get to finish my point from an hour ago? Or?
Go ahead.
Okay. Where was I? As I was saying, the bloodlust that some fans have, and Craig said it because we were talking about it last night. I don't get. This is not. If you want that, there are other franchises for it, and I completely get you. And you have a franchise for that. The MCU has always been a hopeful franchise, and you have the darkest hour right here at the end of Avengers 3. And now Avengers 4, which again is the Avengers film, because Avengers 3 was a Thanos film, we get our Avengers that we've always been hoping for. And that is all of them on the battlefield together. That's why they're coming. Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's what it is. If you want a dark, humbling, oh my God film, you just had it. Cap leaning over Vision's corpse. The last line of the movie is, "Oh God."
Mm-hmm.
Cap, the leader, the guy again who gets the Avengers theme, doesn't know what to do next. It's all over. How much darker do you need to get? Instead, let's turn this around and show some light. And that was the end of the film with the pager. And the reason why I say by Avengers 4, everyone's back, because we haven't got, in the words of Jeremy, the iconic line. No one has said it yet. Avengers assemble.
Not completely. So that would be a good way to do that.
I'm okay with no more death. I'm just sorry. I'm okay with it. We've had enough death. Move on.
All right, well, then let's get to what I think is the most interesting theory in our last one here before we wrap up, which is the idea of an alternate reality, or what they would call the darkest timeline for all of you community watchers. It's the idea that these our fallen friends. I don't have any problem saying they're dead. I think they are dead right now. They'll just be resurrected somehow. But I think that the idea that these guys and gals are in a different reality, a different dimension of ours, and that the Avengers that remain will have to go into them, and the idea that they're even more the worst versions of themselves, and that the Avengers have to find a way to make them remember or convince them that they are actually heroes. What does everyone think of this theory? I think this is very interesting.
You remember how sucky the Pocket Universe was in the 90s? After Onslaught, for those who read the comics, we had Triple G breasted Captain America for a time in the Pocket Universe. Is that what you want, sir?
No, I'm just talking where like Doctor Strange is like actually a dickish surgeon who doesn't give a crap about anyone. You know, like it's one of there was an episode of
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, well, there's an episode of Avengers Assemble, the cartoon on Disney, where they actually had this, where Doctor Doom found a way to go back in time, and he actually just prevents all of the events that lead to the heroes getting their powers. So he saves Bruce Banner from the Gamma experiment. He keeps Tony from getting kidnapped. And in a way that changes everything and makes them into kind of indebted to him and minions of him. And it makes him easily powerful over the world. Something like that would be interesting, where the heroes that we've lost have to remember that they're heroic.
It'd be fun to watch.
Craig, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, but not in like after this movie. I don't know. This movie went in a lot of different directions that I didn't predict that it would, and I'm so glad, so glad that I just didn't read any of the reviews beforehand. Yes. And I think that's what got me with Last Jedi, is that I enjoy that film so much more now. Months removed, and I think it's because the reviews had me predicting something that was going to happen and it didn't happen. I don't see that being the resolution to this particular story. I do think that there could be use the word multiverse. Sorry, DC, but I could see that still being part of it, but I don't think it's going to be like, I don't know. Like, they just went through a comic run where Captain America was Hydra, and it was not received well, like at all. Like, they're basically, I think that they're probably removing contracts from writers and things because of how poorly that was received. So I just don't think that they're going to take it in this direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nate, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, I'll be upfront and say I don't have the comic book knowledge that all of you do. That's a fair thing to say. I look at it from the idea of this is removed from the comic books they influence, but it's still a separate universe. And the only thing I can think of is if you bring them back at the end, and this is just a vision I get. Did you ever see the Super Mario Brothers movie?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, that's a good way to plug the next episode of Guilty Pleasures on Super Mario Brothers.
Oh,
You're welcome, Lou.
Remember when they came back from the back time and they all just like kind of spun back and their heads kind of spun and they just kind of connected again?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm thinking if they're all like, and we're back. Spider-Man's head just flying over it and just connecting again. Don't do it that way. Have a little... And yes, it is dark, but we are living in the darkest time of Marvel right now as far as half of them being just gone, just poof. So a little darkness never hurt, which is maybe why I liked Batman vs. Superman so much. Finally. But I don't want it. I've said it before. I don't want to be that happy-go-lucky, like, mwah, we're all back.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of moroseness. It doesn't all have to be happy.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I want there to be a cost for it. I want there to be not just a single sacrifice cost. You know, I don't want one person to be there. I personally, it makes sense to me that once I finally took a step back and I saw, oh wait, all the original Avengers are still there. Like it makes sense to me now that, like somebody said, I think Nate, it was you, that that there would be a swan song now in Avengers 4 for these original ones, that they are the ones who are going to have to make the sacrifice to save these new Avengers.
It could be, but we also talked about the money earlier.
Yep.
Black Panther made $1 billion, and they're talking about how they can't recast Robert Downey Jr. because either he doesn't want to do it or his price is getting too high. But bullshit. They have the money for it. It would be perfect if we expected, which we all did, for somebody like Captain or Iron Man to die at the end of this movie and just be like, that's it, they're done. Even Chris Evans said, like, I'm done. But how many times has Hugh Jackman said he's done? He did it for how many goddamn years?
Yeah.
Well, and I think that there could still be cameos of like a Tony. So like in the comics, you know, Tony goes on to run S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of that. Like he could step away from the Avengers because of the events that happened in this movie. And then you could still have your new Avengers led by, whether that be Captain Marvel or led by Captain Falcon, whoever ends up taking over the mantle of Captain America. But I think that a Captain America death tied in with a Tony removing himself, taking himself off the playing field somehow, that provides you the way to still keep these original Avengers around for every now and then cameo appearances, but it shifts to a new generation. And that's why I almost think that I want the people that save the day. I don't know if I really want it to be the old Avengers. I kind of want it to be T'Challa, and I want it to be Peter. And I think that's a better direction.
Think about it from a consumer standpoint, and definitely as Marvel and Disney as a studio. Do you want to go see a movie that is strictly the new Avengers?
I think at this point, yeah. I think that
you'd like to go see Falcon and all them be the new Avengers.
Who wanted to see Guardians of the Galaxy before you watched it? If they make a good film,
I think there's a difference.
Black Panther made more money than any other movie as of right now. I mean, Infinity War is going to top it, but and that's an origin story for a character that no one, you know what I mean? Like it's such a tertiary character in the Marvel universe.
But I think there's a difference because there's a number attached to it. Avengers means Iron Man, Cap, Hulk, these people. If you go the new Avengers and you're going to go like, this is not what I was expecting.
Because you don't call it the new Avengers, you continue to call them the Avengers. But and keep in mind for you as somebody who's really watched the MCU and that's your backlog, and that is your Avengers: Hulk, Iron Man, Cap, Black Widow, Hawkeye. That's not
I don't know that there's other Avengers.
Well, no. Can I
go ahead?
What I'm trying to say is, everyone has a different team. If you grew up with the comics, your team is Ant-Man, Wasp, Thor, Iron Man, Hulk. Cap wasn't in the Avengers to start with. He got unthawed later on. So
I mean, there are points we made with that too, as far as the purchase from Fox. Like, they could do a lot with the X-Men and stuff like that too. Like, I could definitely see it being a thing. I'm just being that guy who's like, eh.
I just think that if you have an Avengers poster that has T'Challa and has Falcon and has Ant-Man, I mean, those are people now that we know them so well. That has Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. I think that sells just as well as these characters that, from a financial standpoint, because we trust the MCU at this point to make good movies.
Yeah,
and I just don't think that they need Robert Downey Jr. anymore.
No, I agree with you. I think that they've established that.
Well, and here's the deal. Again, going back to the bloodlust thing, just because you don't need him doesn't mean you need to kill him off. It's not just a sacrifice to, gut the pig and let him die. Why not have the sacrifice be Cap truly decides to hang up the shield and somebody else takes it? Cap is still in the universe. Steve Rogers is not dead. And Chris Evans has said he was going to be done 3 different films by now. And every time they back up the dump truck, Robert Downey Jr. was done after Avengers. And they said, my contract's up. You signed me for 4 films. I've done it. I was in Hulk for 5 seconds. Oh, here comes the dump truck. I'm in. Yeah. I'll do Spider-Man Homecoming. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is all negotiation tactics. So the whole reason why people think people are going to die is because the actors are like, I'm done. Yeah, but the studio is not going to want to kill off these folks. And again, I don't think it's good for the story.
Yeah, and I mean, well, don't forget, like, one of the bigger criticisms of the MCU as a whole has been that, death is kind of meaningless in this reality so far because there's so few people who have truly stayed dead. So I think that Marvel is not deaf to that. And I also think that there's a reason why you plant that. I think that, it's not just that Infinity War or number 4 is just going to be the death movie. But, there has to be, Thanos is a worthy opponent for literally every single one of these heroes even teamed up. And that's why there does have to be a cost for it. And that's why the end of this movie is so effective. They cut out all of the soundtrack. It's literally just like the rumblings of a thunderstorm, and just like you can even hear like whispers of voices as they fade away. I mean, it's haunting. The end of this movie. It really is.
I keep saying that Cap should die. I keep saying Cap should die, but at the same time, the reason why is because I think that they've established 2 characters now that could take up the mantle, and one character in particular that could have a really great social impact beyond the films, and that's Falcon. Because if you just look at what happened with Black Panther and the amount of people coming out into that, and like there's Wakanda Forever voter registration drives going on right now, and I mean, like, it is having such a cultural impact beyond the films, which is why I think it's going to be the first comic book movie to ever be nominated for Best Picture. But if you look at all of that, I just think that there is such a story to be told. And I also think that of our heroes in these 20 films, that Captain America has gotten the best trilogy, and that his story, Chris Evans as Captain America, that story is over. And which is why I'm okay with him dying to make way for a new Captain America. So that's all.
We don't trade a life.
That is Cap's motto in this film. Actually, probably for all time. So, all right. Well, we've been talking for a while now on Infinity War, so let's wrap it up here. Let's just give. We usually give our grades out of 10, but you know what? Screw that. Let's just talk about what we want, like what we left the theater with. What is the lasting impression on you of this movie? That's going to stick with you for a while here. Me personally, again, it's just the fact that you have a story like Infinity Gauntlet in the comic books that's so, take a drink, iconic, and they did literally the main beats in a way that felt fresh and felt new and felt like I was right there with them. I mean, like, everybody knows of the crazy awesomeness of the snap, But the fact that that was preceded by the thought that, oh, maybe they did get him to right there at the last second. And Thanos, like, with a dying breath saying you should have gone for the head before going there in that movie. I just think that, you know, there's certain critics that want to blast on this just because any movie with high expectations is going to have the auto haters, is what I call them, that are just automatically going to write the dissenting opinion because they know it'll get them more clicks. But like, this movie is a triumph of filmmaking. I mean, you take all those characters, you marry all the tones. The Guardians felt like the Guardians. Doctor Strange felt like Doctor Strange. Tony, Cap, they all felt like their own movies that we've seen them in, and yet they're all melded together here into this beautiful concoction. And I cannot stop watching this movie, and I don't think I'm going to. So I cannot recommend this movie highly enough. Nate, let's go to you next. What do you want people left with Infinity War?
I think I said this at the beginning, I don't go see movies twice because I just don't see the point. I want to go see this again, if not for the lush, lovely fucking chair. But I want to go see it again because I feel like I didn't get enough from it. I went and saw Batman vs. Superman 3 times, still one of my heartthrobs. But I want to go see this again and again and again and again because I thought it was probably one of the best Marvel movies they've ever put out. It had depth, it had darkness, it had loss, but loss at a cost. It wasn't just loss, which I think makes a good movie. There's a cost for everything that happens, and that's really good writing. So I want to go see it again because I just thought it was a very well-versed movie.
Definitely. Craig, let's go to you next. We'll end up with Scott.
I close it up with what I said at the beginning. This is the best. If you look at all the Marvel movies, it's trying to not mimic, but to take on the persona of particular kinds of movies, whether that be the heist movie, it be the spy thriller, it be any of those other, the space opera for Guardians of the Galaxy. This, to me, is the best comic book movie that they did. And it's because it reads like a comic book. Not since, and I will give Zack Snyder credit, not since Watchmen, which was basically page for page, that book until the end, did I feel like I was truly watching a comic book unfold before me. Mm-hmm. And so I give it all the credit in the world, and I do hope I get to go see this again. And hopefully Liam takes really long naps so I can sneak out.
The drive-in is your friend.
Yeah, there you go. Scott, what about you? What's your what do you want to leave people with?
Well, now that I've seen Act 1 and Act 2 of this film, and we have come through the darkest point of this film, I'm looking forward to the culmination of, at that point, 11 years of Marvel and the completion of Phase 3, when all of our heroes are on the battlefield together and they're assembled. And when it's called Avengers Secret Invasion for Avengers 4, because the Skrull are going to be in Captain Marvel.
That's true.
So the MCU has always been about optimism and hope, and it's okay to be a hero. It's okay to have this ability to make the world a better place. You don't have to be emo and break somebody's neck. You can be a hero. And because of that, I'm looking forward to Avengers 4 because I know that we're going to have that optimism because we've gone through the dark tunnel and we're going to see the light. So some folks will think that that's too cheesy, but bring on the cheese because it's coming.
Well, I mean, who can argue with billions of dollars worth of cheese?
So he said his Avengers 4. I want to hear other people really quickly. What's Avengers 4 subtitle going to be, Jeremy?
Man, I wish I would have thought about this.
Keep in mind that even though it wasn't really Age of Ultron and it wasn't really Infinity War, they pulled titles from the big comic book arcs. So let me help you out. Secret Invasion
would be fine. You know, honestly, I know that this was the title of the first one in some foreign countries, but looking at Scott's kind of imagery there, I would love just be Avengers Assembled. Like, you know, like I would love that, just that imagery of all of them on the field at the same time. I like the new Avengers idea. I also, somebody said like Avengers like Annihilation a while back. Like, I don't like that. I think something like, I don't know, New Dawn or something. Go Star Wars with it. Why not? Nate, do you have any ideas?
Infinity War 2, Electric Boogaloo.
There you go.
Yeah, real quick, you said Avengers Assemble. I don't think so, just because of the marketing of it with the European thing. But when Avengers, the first like marketing came out for Avengers, the tagline was "Some assembly required," and my little nerd eye twinkled when I saw that. Sooner or later, somebody's got to say Avengers Assemble.
You have a little eye?
Yes, a little nerd eye.
I would have watched it before putting that in. Anyway, so
yeah, you didn't get the answer.
Yeah,
Craig, Avengers Infinity.
Infinity.
Yeah.
Why not? Well, I mean, don't forget though, the Russo said like the title should scare fans of the MCU. So I mean, like they said it should be frightening.
No, they were the Russos also said a lot of things to build up hype. You got to realize
they put Hulk in the trailer. Where's he in the movie?
They put that whole shot in the trailer. That whole shot wasn't in the movie.
Yeah,
we never even talked about Hulk, by the way. It's amazing that they're taking Hulk off the field like that. And the whole idea that he's scared to be the Hulk.
Well, after that beating, I would be too.
And keep in mind. I'm sorry, real quick. Keep in mind, Ruffalo said that Banner's arc goes over all of these movies from Ultron to Ragnarok 3 to 4. So we're watching a wonderful arc with the Hulk here.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, that is going to do it for us here at Full Disclosure from the Front Row Network. But of course, you've been listening to our opinions. We want to know your opinion. So you know what? Go to the Front Row Network on Facebook. Go to thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. We're working on changing it, people. Or find us on Twitter at Front Row Reviews with a Z and tell us what you thought of Infinity War. We want to know all your thoughts. We want to argue with you. We want to know why you think Red Skull was there. Is he coming back? Are any of our friends coming back? Are they really dead? Are we going into the Soulstone? There's so many freaking questions from this movie. Craig, why don't you tell people a little bit of what's coming up this month? Scott, actually, what's coming up with we took a break with a hiatus to restructure some things. What do you have on deck for flashbacks coming up on the network? You said.
Yeah, I haven't recorded it yet.
Still, what's coming up?
Sure. If I ever sit down with it, we're gonna. I said this a year ago. We're gonna do Last Starfighter.
There you go, right there. Reboot coming. It's a perfect time for it.
For better or worse.
That's right. Craig, what's coming up for Beyond the Mouse?
We're actually going to hopefully sit down with Lou Hare, and we're going to do the Disney bracket that everybody was sharing on Facebook a couple of weeks ago. And then we also had a special request from a listener to do top tips that we have for someone who's never been to Walt Disney World who's going to be going for the first time. And so we will definitely sit down and do that. That might end up being a special release episode.
Tip number 1, rob a bank.
Nice. Well, there's also some other great stuff. Of course, we'll be doing some full disclosures on Deadpool 2, which is coming out in a mere 2 weeks.
Josh Brolin's other superhero movie this month.
A mere 2 weeks.
The poster of Deadpool painting Cable.
Yes.
And it is him from the Goonies.
It's fantastic. Bring it on, One-Eyed Willie. Also, we'll probably be bringing you a full disclosure on Solo, a Star Wars story, to whoever wants to go see that later this month. But also, pretty big things happening. Scott, I believe you and Brandon are getting back on Zonasodes, right?
One of these days.
One of these days. Never mind.
Yes.
Sarah and I are, of course, going strong with Are You Afraid of the Podcast, and we might be closing in on an official interview with the creator of the show himself. We are trying to work it out right now. So
don't jinx that stuff.
I'm not trying to. I'm just
find
excited.
some wood.
There you go.
Knock on that piano back there.
There you go. Anyway, thank you everyone for sticking with us through our hiatus. We had a lot of things to work out and just kind of restructure some things, but we are back in May, and we are so glad to be back for Infinity War. So that is going to do it for us here at the Front Row Network and at Full Disclosure. Let's go, Scott, Nate, and then Craig. So for the Front Row Network, I'm Jeremy Geckner.
I'm Scott. Hi. Bye.
I'm the Natron.
And I am Craig.
And as always, we will see you in the front row if we're not snapped out of existence.
I would like to be called an angel pirate from now on.
It had to be this way.
You should have gone for the head.
I wanted to be last. It had to be the